listening to the Fifth Down Fantasy Football Podcast with Johnny Slokes.
Top 3 to 5 pick next year.
And Camilla.
For the value you could have gotten at Ryan at.
I almost had 5,000 yards, but no, you don't want me. What you're saying is Wayne Gallman is the Dustin Funches of running backs?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I guess you can put me down in the book for saying that.
We now bring you to the Fifth Down.
I'm going to start this show off on a little mini rant. I've been holding it in for too long, and I feel like I'm ready to explode. I want to know what the fuck is going on with all these running backs on these mediocre teams going in the second and third round, and so far in a lot of these mocks, like Jordan Howard, Todd Gurley, Jay Ajayi, Leonard Fournette, Zach Howell. I'll even throw maybe McCaffrey in there. It's a big group of running backs that are being drafted so high, and I don't get it. None of them should sniff close to 10 touchdowns. They all played for teams that should be losing often. A lot of them, there's a couple of them though that have exceptions, but most of them aren't going to catch a ton of passes. Why are they getting drafted so high? There's receivers going in the second and third round that are just better options than these running backs. These are running backs, or these are wide receivers that have scored 10 plus touchdowns before, and they play for good teams with great quarterbacks. Don't overthink it this year. Just draft a wide receiver in the second and third round and reap the rewards. I do, however, like DeMarco Murray in the second round, and I guess maybe Lamar Miller if he falls a little bit in the third.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with PPR leagues, you want to go get those good receivers early, and I would stay away from most of those running backs in the second round, like you said, and I'd probably be more apt to get them if they drop in the third just to see. But I think you'll end up reaping the benefits if you're the one who gets the receivers in the second round and everybody else is going running back. I think that's going to end up being a good strategy for you.
Well, because I was working on an article about draft strategy, and I was looking at the ADP, and then I was looking at the running backs, and I was like, a lot of running backs in that range. It's like the running back graveyard to me, where it's just a bunch of running backs all right in a row that are on bad teams, and they could easily get game flowed out because a lot of them aren't bona fide pass catchers, And I was like, wow, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But
I understand.
I'm sorry for that, Fifth Downers. You're listening to the Fifth Down Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Johnny Slokes, and with me is Casey. I'm really glad to have you on. I apologize for all that.
It's all right, man. It's good.
That's just pretty much how my week has been going, how I've been looking at things.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be doing our first of 4 installments of our divisional breakdowns. We'll be hitting the NFC and the AFC North pretty hard today. Casey, you'll be helping me out. Which conference do you think we should start on, the AFC or NFC?
Hey, it's up to you, man. I mean, my Packers are in the NFC North, so I'm good to go whenever you want to start going on the NFC. So we can start wherever you want.
All right. I think before we get to that, we'll do a little bit of station identification. We're part of the BS Podcast Network. We're in the gold tier. Check us out there. www.bspodcastnetwork.com. You can find our shows on www.flurriedsports.org, a great new sports site that just opened up. We're also on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher. Oh, dude, did you know that they you can create your own channels on SleeperBot now? Do you use that at all, Casey?
Oh, I don't use that, but I've started up a couple podcasts with different things, not fantasy related, so I might look at that.
Yeah, I started using this app, and it gives you pretty fast injury updates. But then I I had to turn like the notification off because I kept getting like notifications about like touchdowns that I didn't even like see on like the Red Zone channel. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like they're coming out with, like notifications before the TV is.
Yeah.
But let's jump into some news and notes. I know. Did you hear about Chris Johnson re-signing with the Arizona Cardinals? Do you feel like he's like now like the handcuff for David Johnson?
Yeah, I did see that today. I saw that. He really kind of broke out before David Johnson. He had that good season where people had kind of forgot about him, and he came back and then he did good, but then nothing really since then. So I don't really.
He was good, and then he got hurt. David Johnson came in and then just ran away with it pretty much. I think like he played in like 4 games last year, and he got hurt of like a groin injury or something like that, and got like on IR.
Yeah.
Stafford could get an extension within the coming weeks. We know Derek Carr just got. Obviously, he's going to get paid more than that. Stafford, the agent, was trying to hold out as long as he could to see if Cousins was going to get a deal. Obviously, it doesn't look like that's going to happen now. So, I mean, Stafford's going to be the highest paid quarterback going into the season, probably.
Yeah, it's his turn.
Jamal Williams opening up camp as the backup to Ty Montgomery. You still think he's worth the stash, though?
I mean, I do, just because, Ty Montgomery has some injury history, and, you never know how he's like. He did good last year, and I'm really hoping he's going to do great this year. But, I mean, there is still a question mark there. So it's always good to have a handcuff for him, but at the same time, like, the Packers do not run the ball much. And so if Montgomery stays healthy, Jamal Williams would be pretty useless on your team. But, I mean, if Montgomery gets hurt, he'd be a sell-high candidate for me, just because I feel like if Ty Montgomery gets hurt, even if Jamal Williams is the backup, they'll still do a bit of a timeshare.
I know I was able to actually trade Ty Montgomery last year when he first came on as a starter, and he started doing it. He had a couple of good games, and I was able to flip him for Latavius Murray, and then Latavius Murray started scoring all those touchdowns. Something I'll probably end up doing something like that too.
Yeah.
Zeke's investigation is suspended. Are you not worried about him as much going into the season, or do you think there's still a chance that he could serve maybe a short suspension or anything along those lines?
I mean, I'm more worried than I was when you asked me last time, probably like a month or two ago, because there's just more stuff going on now, and, he's not – I don't think he's going to get suspended for anything he's done, but, he's just adding to his resume, so he's going to be on a shorter leash. And, that just worries me as someone who you're going to be picking, in the top 5. So, for me, that's going to make it tough, with Odell Beckham and
ADP
Julio.
Down a little bit, in your opinion?
Yeah, so it is a little bit. Like, it's going to make it tough if you're sitting there, assuming Antonio Brown goes at 3. If you're sitting there at 4 or 5, you're going to have a little bit of a toss-up on your hands if you want to go ahead and get one of those great receivers, or do you want to, take the chance with Zeke that he might get suspended? He's probably going to be there for the fantasy playoffs, so you don't want to let him slip too much. And I'm one of those people that if I'm sitting there at 6, I'm hoping people pick the receivers. Like, I would love for him to slip. So I'm hoping his ADP goes down because I'll still draft him. I'm not worried enough where I won't draft him, but I do think it'll make him slide a little bit.
What if going into the season before, like say sometime in like August it comes out he is going to get suspended for 2 games? Then where do you draft him?
Then I think I'd probably put him at 6. That's where I think he would probably go, because I think if he's going to be suspended for 2 games, people might not be willing to risk that, even though he'll still be playing. When you need him, you don't want to just risk those 2 games. That might make you push Julio and Odell Beckham ahead of him. So I think that would probably make him slide to around 6. I still think most people would take him before those receivers, but I could definitely see that make it. I could see, like, if he got suspended, that would make him fall a little bit for sure.
Yeah, we'll get plenty of time to talk about this as the season approaches, so we're not gonna burn it all out here in one stroke here, So, it's definitely something that we'll keep an eye on. Mike Williams to open on the PUP list. I guess it's not really that big of a surprise. Did you see that thing on Twitter where, like, I think it was Scheffler, he tweeted out that he's going to miss the season. He just got back surgery. He's going to need back surgery.
Oh, I did not see that.
Oh, yeah, that's when it was first reported that he was going to miss the season. And, like, he needs season-ending back surgery. But then he already – then it was already reported later on, though, that he already got the surgery and he's been recovering. So he's going to start out on the PUP list, though. Gary Barnidge visits Jacksonville. Does that excite you at all? Does that make you moist in any way?
Not really. Gary Barnidge I think is a good talent, but he would be the number one option in Jacksonville, having traded Julius Thomas. So, if you're in a deep league and you're wanting a backup tight end, that would be at least that he would be a starter in an offense that's going to throw it a lot. So, that's something that, you could at least look out for. I don't think it's a huge pickup at all. In fantasy terms, it could be. He could end up getting around 8 touchdowns or something like that. So, even though he didn't get in, even though he was so bad last year compared to what he was the year before. But,
yeah,
he could always
night and day.
Put up a decent year.
You hear about Dante Foreman being arrested. He was arrested on marijuana possession and possession of a firearm. But I guess later on it was reported, though, it was his gun and the marijuana was not his. It was his friend's.
Yeah,
of course it was
he
his
claimed
friend's.
the marijuana wasn't his, Yeah.
Of course it wasn't. He said that he was going to take a drug test, so I'd like to find out those results.
Yeah, he may be bluffing. He may just be saying that, thinking everybody would be like, oh, he wouldn't offer it if he really hadn't smoked, and then he's going to fail.
Finally, some good news. Le'Veon Bell fully recovered from off-season surgery. He got some surgery on his groin. He will not be with the team until around mid-August, late August. That's when he plans on signing his tender, like a $12 million tender.
Yeah.
Zach Miller to be released. That's not surprising. Obviously, Kirk Cousins playing under tag. How do you feel about that? Kirk Cousins under tag.
It seems like that's where we are now. It seems like every year they talk about getting a long-term deal done, and then nothing gets done, and he plays under the tag. So,
well, he will be a free agent in 2018.
Every year that he'll have a free agent year, or every year that's a contract year, is always something to look for, and that's always something that's kind of exciting from a fantasy perspective. So, that's someone who, maybe if he had got a long-term deal, you'd be a little more worried about him, that he'd get complacent and and he'd start kind of regressing. But if he's still fighting for that huge contract, I still expect him to put up pretty good numbers, even though I'm not a big Kirk Cousins guy.
Do you feel like they should have given him a contract, though?
I can't, I know a lot of people love Kirk Cousins, but if I'm the Redskins, I'm fine just kind of playing this game with him, keep signing him to one-year deals, hoping something better comes along.
Now you ran out of ammo. Now you lost him for good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's one of those quarterbacks where he's not good enough to win you a Super Bowl, but he's good enough to he's better than most of your other options. So, it's one of those kind of precarious situations that they're in.
You don't think he's good enough to win a Super Bowl?
If he had the right team around him, maybe, but I just don't see it with Kirk.
I think he's an above average. I think he's an above average quarterback. He didn't have a very good defense behind him. He wasn't going to win a Super Bowl. He wasn't going to win a Super Bowl in Washington, but that's because Washington's a poorly ran organization.
Yeah, the thing for me is, you can always – those quarterbacks that are carried by their defenses to the Super Bowl, they're always quarterbacks that don't really turn the ball over. And I know he's cut down on the turnovers, but that still just worries me a little bit. And I just don't think he'll ever – because he's going to be getting huge contracts. I don't think he's going to go somewhere that already has a great defense. And I think that's what he would have to even get close to a Super Bowl because, I mean, he puts up the stats, but I just don't see him as a winning quarterback necessarily. I think he'll be a career – I think he'll be like Matt Stafford. I think him and Matt Stafford's careers will be very similar.
Oh, well, I think Matthew Stafford does have a lot in common with a guy like Kirk Cousins because I think they're both very talented guys that haven't necessarily had a very good defense behind them, and you're gonna end up racking up a lot of stats when you're playing from behind a lot. So, Teddy Bridgewater was seen training without a knee brace. This is the first time since the gruesome injury that we've seen something like this. He was posting it on Twitter. He figures to be the backup anyways, but it is nice to see that he's gonna, he's getting over this. He's probably still gonna come out on the PUP list, but
yeah, I mean,
it's nice to see.
You were worried that you'd never see him play again, so I mean, for him to even be out there is something good going in the positive direction. I mean, and if he can recover from this, I think he will regain that starting spot eventually because, I mean, a lot of people were pretty high on him. They thought he was just going to keep improving. And, I mean, I think he probably would have too. I was never huge on him, but, if he can come back, I'm worried that he's not going to. He was never, people think of him as a really mobile quarterback, I think, but, he didn't run that much. So I'm hoping maybe he can just develop a little more in the pocket and he can just become a really good pocket quarterback because, I mean, I'm pulling for him. I know he plays for the Vikings, but you never want to see a career ended.
See if he can do that.
Yeah.
Cam Newton expected to run less and get rid of the ball faster. It sounds like a scheme change a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, and that makes me kind of, if that really is true, that makes me kind of a little less high on him. I might move him down from my 5 spot because that was one of the big things. I just love his running. And, I mean, I still think he'll run close to the goal line, so that's still one of the main reasons I really like him this year. But that may make me slide him down a little bit in my updated rankings.
All right, and I think that pretty much covers the news pretty good. I guess we will start out with the NFC. We'll start off with the division champions, the Packers. I mean, we all know they have Aaron Rodgers and he's this great quarterback and everything. His ADP though, it's the beginning of the third round, 303. That is pretty high. And I know a lot of people don't like taking quarterbacks early. How do you feel about taking Aaron Rodgers like that early?
I don't love it, but you like the team that you drafted, and I've seen you post some more stuff about different teams you've drafted, and I've seen you do the Gronk, Aaron Rodgers, and either Le'Veon Bell or Brown or one of those guys, and I'm starting to kind of like that. As much as I don't like drafting quarterbacks high, it's starting to get intriguing. Just like the mock drafts I've done, seeing who's there, it just seems like this would be the year out of any year that I could see myself drafting a quarterback really high. And if I'm not going to draft Aaron Rodgers, some of the guys are going pretty close behind Rodgers. He's probably going around before all the other quarterbacks. But I'd rather just wait a few rounds if I'm not going to get Rodgers rather than drafting Breeze or Brady or somebody like that, even though, I do like those guys. If I'm not going to get Rodgers, I'd probably rather wait. But, the third round, it just depends on who's left, honestly. But that could be too high in some instances, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind having him there.
I mean, I seen an interesting stat, and roughly 40% of the running backs drafted inside as a top 12 running back, about 40% of those guys do not return their value. They fail to reach their mark.
Yeah.
That's over the past 5 years. But Aaron Rodgers, he's finished as a top 2 quarterback in every single league or every single year where he was healthy, where he's been a healthy 16 games, except for one season, and that was in 2015. So.
Yeah, I mean, and
he's been that dominant. He's been that dominant at the position.
And that always worries me. Like, and you can say this about any player, so I try not to harp on this with players about like injuries. But I guess it's maybe because I'm just a Packers fan, because he has stayed pretty healthy. But I just always get so worried because it seems like he'll get a lot of nicks throughout the year that just always worry me, whether it be his calf or his hamstring or something like that, his shoulder. And so I just get so worried. And, yeah, I think it's just because I stay worried. Like, every time I see him get touched by anybody, I just have a mini heart attack. So I think maybe that's just where my bias is coming from.
Well, I mean, I guess it's like that for, like, anyone who has, like, their favorite team. Like, it's like when I watch David Johnson run, and especially when his knee bent back like that towards the end of last year, I mean, it terrified me, Because you don't want to see a star player on your favorite team go down.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you know where I stand with Aaron Rodgers. I'm not afraid to pull the trigger on him. I feel like he can give you a decent enough value for where he's going at, because I do think he's going to finish in the top 2 this year if he stays like healthy throughout the full 16 games or 15 games, since we don't really play week 17. But I like his chances.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I guess like one big caveat on that, though, is a lot of people will say that he doesn't give you like a week-to-week advantage that's high enough to warrant that high draft pick. It's like the main argument against that, though.
Yeah, that's the thing you always got to think of, and that's one of the hardest things about fantasy football is really determining value and trying to think, like, if I draft this guy here, will not even that out. It's just a lot of things to think about. So, I tend to like to wait on my quarterbacks just because you can always there'll always be a starting quarterback on the free agent wire, even if it's not a good one. So if something happens to a quarterback that you draft late or they just don't play good, then, I feel like there's always other options where you could trade. That's why I just get nervous drafting them so high.
Yeah, I think we spent enough time on Aaron Rodgers. Let's go over to the running game. Obviously, they didn't run the ball a whole lot last year. Eddie Lacy went down. They converted Ty Montgomery into a running back. He is now being drafted as running back 17 in PPR formats right now. I think that's about there, but I don't think that he's going to finish much higher than 17. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like
definitely got.
I kind of feel like you're drafting him at a ceiling a little bit.
Yeah, he's definitely got a ceiling, and you really don't know how high that ceiling is just yet, because when you look at him play, you can tell he's just got the skill. So I think he's one of those guys that's got a ton of upside, but at the same time, I can see him having a ceiling. So he worries me. I'm probably going to be staying away from him, but I stay away from most Packers players. So that might not be saying much.
The Packers did draft 3 running backs, though, so it makes me feel like that they're not totally committed to him just being like that every down guy. Like, they drafted Jamal Williams, they drafted Aaron Jones, they drafted another guy that's 230 pounds or something like that. So they brought some guys in there to compete. And how do you feel about the rookies? Are you a Jamal Williams guy, or are you a guy like Aaron Jones?
I do like Jamal Williams. I do want to see him all in action. I'm looking forward to preseason, to getting them all on the field, to see him play. I'm on the Jamal Williams train right now, but that could easily change once I see Aaron Jones and if he really comes out with something. But I'm just looking forward to seeing it. I like watching rookies battle because, they're so hungry and they just want to make the team or just, move up in the depth chart.
Well, I will say this, obviously the news came out that Jamal Williams is opening up camp as the backup running back to Ty Montgomery. But I feel like Aaron Jones he is the better athlete. He is the better athlete than Jamal Williams. He is. I think he's the better athlete, and hopefully it will show.
Yeah.
I think the Green Bay guy's a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't like either one, man. Like, I just want somebody. We're just desperate for a great running back to pop up. So I'm just hoping I see something in either of these guys.
Let's go over to the wide receiving core. Obviously, they got lots of options for Aaron Rodgers to throw to. Jordy Nelson was wide receiver 2 last year. He's being drafted as wide receiver 6 this year. I feel like that's fair, but I feel like he could even surpass that. I feel like he could still finish in the top 3, and he's being drafted right now at the tail end of the first. I think that's good. You could probably tag him up with a running back or go a wide receiver on the turn. I think that would be a pretty nice, especially if you can go like him and Dez together. That would be pretty good.
Yeah, I do like Jordy. He's got a high ceiling. Him and Aaron, I love that pair. But I was big on getting Jordy last year. I was sure to draft him in all my drafts. I was getting a steal, and I knew I was if he stayed healthy. I knew I was going to get a steal, and it was worth the risk for me. But this year, his ADP is just too rich. I can't risk it just because I just get nervous having Packers players anyway, because then if they have bad games, it makes me even more mad at them, and I just can't handle it. So I tend to stay away
from
him
really
anyway,
didn't go up that much from last year, though. I think it wasn't a second-round pick last year.
I don't remember what his ADP was last year. I was getting him in the 3rd round of some drafts, I remember.
I'm pretty sure it went second round. I'm pretty sure it went second round in our league last year, but I feel like though he's fairly. I think where he's priced is fair because you have to like him more than all those running backs in the second round. You have to put him in front of all of them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You just got to see how the draft board kind of plays out, and I'm not gonna pass on him for somebody else who I think is worse just because he plays for the Packers, or I'm worried he's going to have a down year, get hurt, or whatever. So I'm not going to let him fall, but I may, look at my other options and just see what I have at that spot in the draft if he's available.
Well, the other options on this football team, Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb. Devontae Adams being drafted as wide receiver 21, right in the middle of the 4th round, and Randall Cobb is wide receiver 40. About 8th pick in the 8th round. I know you're not a big Devontae Adams guy. Do you feel like the wide receiver 21, do you feel like that's a fair price for him, like in the middle of the 4th round?
Honestly, no. I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed in Devontae Adams because his rookie year he played pretty good, and then he came back and was disappointing his sophomore year. Obviously, his 3rd year, he produced a lot better. But, you've heard everybody say it. Most of those stats came in 3 or 4 games. And so he's just someone that worries me. And I'd much, much rather wait for a guy like Randall Cobb towards the end of the 8th round rather than getting Devontae in the 4th round. Like, I know I'd pass on him for a few guys that are behind him. So I'm not on a hype train at all. I think he's just too high.
Yeah, he's being drafted as a wide receiver 2, but I feel like I'd be a lot more comfortable with him if he was like my wide receiver 3.
Yeah, are Michael Crabtree and Golden Tate, they're going behind Devontae Adams, right?
I do not have the whole thing right in front of me. I just have the players that we're talking about.
I think they are going. Last time I checked, they were. I can pull up fantasy football.
Yeah, I know Crabtree is also a 4th rounder. He's going right around the same time frame as Crabtree.
I would take Crabtree and Golden Tate ahead of Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I know Golden Tate's going at Golden Tate's going at the back of the 4th round.
Yeah, it would be hard for me.
You take Golden Tate over Devontae Adams. You feel like he has like a safer floor.
Yeah, I just like the receptions. I like the consistency that I feel like I'm going to get with Golden Tate. rather than Devontae Adams. Where I would worry about, like where I would get to a point where I would think about drafting Adams is if he falls and I'm having to choose between guys like him, Edelman, Larry Fitzgerald, guys like that. I still think I'd probably pick both those guys for Adams, though, just because I just feel safer with him.
Do you remember when they actually used Randall Cobb in the red zone?
Oh, definitely. And we still, he's still one of those guys who doesn't put up the huge numbers, but he still is there when we need him. Like, he's always making big catches. Him and Rodgers have a really good rapport with each other. There's just so many weapons now.
How old do you think Randall Cobb is?
Randall Cobb, I'm pretty sure he's like 29 or 30. Or no.
He's only 26.
Wow.
He'll be 27 before the season starts. But I mean,
I should have went back.
He's been in the league for a long time.
And that's the thing. That's why I'd rather wait because Randall Cobb has fallen off a lot in terms of ADP, and I mean obviously in terms of production too. But he's still a good receiver, and he's still someone, like I said, I'd be a lot more comfortable drafting him in the 8th round than I would Devontae Adams in the 4th.
Yeah, personally, I wouldn't want to touch Devontae Adams. He does have regression. It smells like regression to me when you just look at his numbers. I'd much rather take a chance on a guy like Randall Cobb, who you can get a whole 4 rounds later. How do you feel about Martellus Bennett? He is going in the back of the 7th round as tight end number 8. Do you feel like it's a fair price for him?
I think it is on paper. I'm worried about the production. I love Martellus Bennett. I love Martellus Bennett when he was with the Bears. I wasn't on the Patriots, and I was so happy we got him. And I think he's going to be good on our offense, but I don't know in terms of fantasy how much he's going to put up. So he worries me a little bit in that aspect. I'm probably going to stay away from him just because I know that the way we use our tight end is a lot different than the way most teams do. And we've got 3 pretty good tight ends in Richard Rodgers and Lance Kendricks along with Martellus Bennett. So, it's kind of a crowded tight end field. He's going to be the obvious number 1, but with so many weapons on that team, it just worries me.
My thing is, where was he when Gronk got hurt? Was he a ghost? It just didn't seem like he really showed out enough when Gronk got hurt.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to him. I thought he was going to ball whenever Gronk got hurt.
That's a team that likes to use the tight end. Green Bay doesn't even use the tight end that much,
And I remember Martellus, he was hurt a little bit, but, I mean, when he was healthy, it was still so surprising they weren't using him more, and it was kind of frustrating.
Well, that's the only thing I'm really worried about him. Going over to Green Bay, he might get underutilized in Green Bay. They have a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah.
I mean, even a guy like Randall Cobb didn't even get 100 targets last year.
Yeah, that's the thing, and especially with a team that already doesn't utilize the tight end that much, that just are 2 things that kind of spells trouble.
Now you got to spend a 7th round pick for him. To me, that bothers me a little bit.
Yeah. I know you're not big on I don't know, I'm pretty sure Ebron's behind him, but I'd probably wait for Ebron. I know you're not a big Ebron guy.
No, not really. I mean, he seems like a guy that can get a lot of receptions, but he's never really been utilized a whole lot in the red zone. We'll get to him. We'll definitely get to him. That's the next team that we're about to talk about. Actually, a pretty good transition. We'll jump right into the Detroit Lions. We were talking about Eric Ebron, and what do I think of Eric Ebron? I think Eric Ebron's a really good athlete. I think sometimes he does suffer from the dropsies. Just the Lions and the Packers, they don't really utilize their tight ends a whole lot in the red zone. And it showed in Eric Ebron's stats last year. He had a lot of games where he had at least 4 receptions, but he only had 1 touchdown in the whole season.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people last season were really high on Ebron, and then, he just he just got, 1 touchdown on the whole season, and so, I mean, he worries me, but in an offense where they throw it as much as the Lions do. They still have weapons, but they don't have a ton of weapons. They added Kenny Galladay, and, a lot of people think that's going to be a huge pickup, and it might be. But I still think Ebron, I think they're going to look for him more. I think they realize that they need to utilize a skill like that and an athlete like that in the red zone. So I think, I would look for him to improve next season. So, he might be someone that's on my radar later in drafts.
Eric Ebron, what is he, like 23, 24 years old still?
Yeah, he's really young.
He's still pretty young. He's going to get better. I mean, it usually takes tight ends 3 or 4 years to really set in, we haven't seen Eric Ebron at his best yet.
Yeah, definitely.
He's getting drafted right now as tight end 13, middle of the 11th round. That's not really a bad price tag for him. You're getting him as a 13th tight end. He could easily outdo that ADP.
Yeah, I feel a lot better about someone there than I do a guy like Martellus Bennett.
We were talking about, you were talking about Kenny Galladay a little bit. The wide receiving core as a whole, I think, is a bit underwhelming. I mean, you got Golden Tate. He catches a lot of passes, a lot of short passes around the line of scrimmage. He's going to get you about 90 to 100 receptions, though. That's pretty good for PPR. You can get him in the back of the 4th round as wide receiver 25. I think he's a value there. He's a guy that's going right around that turn of 4-5, the 4th and 5th round, and you can potentially get 100 catches still. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and this is one of the few seasons I've been high on Golden Tate, and I think it's just because I've seen what other guys are going, and so I like him because I know he's gonna get a ton. And so if you get a ton of receptions, that's the first thing you got to worry about. Then you've just got the yards, and you can he's a talent that can make up the yards, and he's one of those guys that he can have one of those crazy games where he wins. That's someone who I really like his value this year, as opposed to maybe some of the years in the past.
I mean, he's obviously never been a huge touchdown guy. I think the highest he's ever been was 7 when he was with Seattle. So he's obviously not really utilized that way. Marvin Jones, yeah, he was a guy that first 3 weeks of the season last year was making me look like a fool because I said there's no way he's going to outdo Golden Tate. And he was the number 1 wide receiver through the first 3 weeks. And then he completely fell off a cliff. I think he only caught 14 passes from that point on, or something crazy like that. It was real bad. And I think he's in jeopardy of losing his job to Galladay. I really think Galladay can take his job. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely could. I think it's an open competition.
I mean, I know it's not like that right now in the depth chart, but it would not surprise me if that day did come.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if it came week 8 or 9 or something. If Galladay has a couple of good games.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Galladay right now, he's not going to get drafted in redraft. We know that. But I think he could be I think he could end up being a good waiver wire pickup come later on in the season.
Yeah, and people love him in dynasty leagues.
And I mean, he's a big dude. He's 6'4". He can use his size to win. He could be that red zone guy that maybe they let Antoine Bolden go. They need someone to replace the 8 or 9 touchdowns he got.
Yeah, that's what everybody's pointing to that really loved Ebron, that are really high on Ebron this year, is the loss of Antoine Bolden. So, I mean, I'm not really on that train. I don't think it'll matter that much. That's
an easy correlation to make, but you got to also realize, I mean, they signed Bolden for a reason. Maybe when they already had Ebron on the team, they could have just given him that role to begin with,
Yeah, it's kind of, that view's been kind of beaten to the ground a little bit.
It's like, well, we'll sign this 35-year-old. We feel like he could do it better than you.
Yeah.
I know people are either really high on this backfield or really low on this backfield. Where do you stand about Mirabella, Theo Riddick?
since you said everybody's really high or really low, I'll say I'm in the middle. I know you were high on Abdullah. I know you kind of backed off that recently. I'm not huge on this backfield. I said I'm in the middle. I'd probably lean a little more towards I'm pretty low on them. Just because, Amir Abdullah's shown some stuff like I thought he could be pretty good. But he worries me. Theo Riddick's a guy who, especially in PPR, is going to be valuable. He got hurt a lot last year, so that worries me a little bit. But I do like the fact that they've got two running backs who are going to be kind of fighting for time. And I think that will be good for him. But I don't like that they have Matt Asiata now. And so, he's going to vulture a lot of touchdowns from them. And that's someone who I'll be worried about. Amir Abdullah's going around. Amir Abdullah's probably going to be one of the last starting running backs available. So if you just want someone who's going to start, you could probably go for him. But I'd tend to stay away from this backfield.
Yeah, the only running back I want in this team is Theo Riddick. Theo Riddick, he's going at the back of the 7th round as running back 35. He's easily going to beat that. He's going to be at least a running back 2 this season. He catches so many passes. You know what he does. His role is safe. Amir Abdullah's role he's still safe, but I think his touchdown total is going to be capped because Matt Asiata is on the team. He's the goal line vulture. Thanks a lot, Matt. You fucked everything up. Fucked it all up for Amir Abdullah. Amir Abdullah could have been great, but he fucked it up. Matt Asiata's probably not even going to get drafted, but yeah, he's going to have value as a goal line back. Amir Abdullah is getting drafted in the middle of the 5th round, and he's gonna only score you like 4 or 5 touchdowns.
If that, yeah.
And that's a shame.
Yep.
But a guy that should easily outdo his ADP is a guy like Matthew Stafford. He's being drafted as quarterback 15. He's getting in the 11th round. I feel like he can beat that. I feel like he's a fringe quarterback 1. He's a quarterback 1 if you wait.
Yeah, I love the value of a guy like Stafford who is going to throw it a ton and doesn't have he hurt his finger a lot last year, it seems like, but, he's really been healthy for them. And so
he was doing great until he hurt his finger.
Yeah, I just don't he's low on a lot of boards, and I know why he was probably around that on my board too. I think I had him at 14.
I think I had him at 14 or 13 or something like that.
That's someone who is going to put up at least 4,000 yards. He's going to hurl at least probably 20 touchdowns, maybe a few less if he kind of had off year last year. But he's one of those guys who could throw for over 5,000 yards. And if he throws for over 5,000 yards, that right there, I don't care how many touchdowns he has, that's going to end up being a good season, especially when you're getting him at. So that's one of those.
He's your good enough quarterback. Because he's going to be good. He's going to be good enough for you to get by to where you're not going to be hurt in that position.
And I think he's got a much higher ceiling than the guys he's going around to in terms of quarterback.
Yeah. And because you waited so long for a quarterback, you have good players at other positions now. And your team's going to be stronger overall because Matthew Stafford's good enough.
Yeah.
That's what he is to me. He's this will do.
Yep.
I think that's enough talk about the Detroit Lions. Let's go talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Bradford, obviously not a guy you want as your quarterback 1. Maybe if you're in a 2 quarterback league, and I was just drafting for the Scott Fish Bowl the past couple of weeks, and it's a super flex league. Finally just got done maybe a week ago. Sam Bradford is my quarterback 3. So pats on the back to me.
Good luck with that. I hope that turns out well for you.
Well, it's better than having him as your quarterback 2. That's the
I hope
way
you don't have too
about
many injuries from your quarterback position.
Well, I mean, I have Dak Prescott, I have Andy Dalton, and I have Sam Bradford. So hopefully I don't have to use him until week 6. I think both Dak Prescott and Andy Dalton have the same bye week. I think it's like week 6. I was like, shit, I fucked up. Oh well,
I hate when I don't really realize. Yeah, I hate when I'm not really thinking about that as I'm going. And I remember, I'd be like, shoot, I need to be looking at the bye weeks.
Sam Bradford is going as quarterback 25. If you can believe that many quarterbacks get drafted. If everyone takes a backup.
Yeah.
Delvin Cook,
I know you undrafted.
I know you like Delvin Cook. He's going as running back 27. He's going in the middle of the 6th round. Is he going to be on a lot of your teams or what?
Probably not, honestly. If he falls or if I'm looking at value and I think he's the best available, then yeah, I'll take him because I do like him. Especially in redraft leagues, I would just be worried because
I feel like you're overpaying for him in redraft leagues because Latavius Murray, he's getting drafted as running back 40 in the 9th round, and I feel like both of their rushing yardage could be similar. And Latavius Murray is going to be the one scoring more touchdowns than him. Honestly, I'd rather have Latavius Murray than I'd rather have Dalvin Cook at this point.
That's the thing is Latavius Murray is going to be taking a lot of those touchdowns, so that kind of caps what Dalvin Cook can do. I think when the season first started, when they first started doing mock drafts, I'm pretty sure Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook were closer than that. But, 3 rounds apart, I'd probably rather have a guy like Latavius Murray as well.
Well, because, there's been news that coming out that Dalvin Cook's going to be the starter, Latavius Murray's the backup. But you got to imagine that they paid Latavius Murray all this money. They're not going to just pay him all this money and not use him. They're going to use him. And I think they are going to use him in a short yardage role. But I think the yardage, though, I think it'll be a lot closer than people think, the yardage. One thing I think Dalvin Cook might get on is the reception. You could get the receptions, though. Dalvin Cook can do stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
Jarrett McKinnon going undrafted. I was a guy that I was pretty high on going into the season once even with Latavius Murray getting signed. But now that Dalvin Cook has been drafted, that pretty much killed all his value. The receiving core, there's 2 main guys that we have to worry about: Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. Stephon Diggs is being drafted as wide receiver 31. Do you feel like he's a little bit undervalued?
I definitely do at this point. If you just watch that guy play, he's just so dynamic. And I know I don't love the quarterback situation he's got, but he's going to get you a ton of receptions. This is another guy that, you worry a little bit with injuries, but when you're getting him that late for a guy that's going to get that many receptions, and he's the clear – I know Adam Thielen is doing really good, and he's a pretty good receiver, and I think he's really underrated. I think Stephon Diggs is the clear number 1 in that offense, and I just think he's going to have a pretty good season this year, especially where he's going in the draft. I love his value.
I really do like Adam Thielen. I think that I do like his game. He's a really good outside receiver. I think he's a really good complement to Stephon Diggs. He's a lot bigger than people think. I actually think that Thielen might be a better value than Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is a pretty good value. He's going in the middle of the 6th round. I think he has 90 catch appeal. But I think Adam Thielen, he could be a guy they can use in the red zone. He's a bigger guy that I think that can utilize his size down there in the red zone. I know they got also Kyle Rudolph, who caught like 33% of the team's touchdowns last year. He's going as what is it? Tight end 9 right now in the middle of the 8th round. Do you like that? I mean, he's going after a guy like Tyler Eifert. He's going after a guy like Martellus Bennett. Would you rather have Martellus Bennett or Kyle Rudolph?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to get to. I would rather have a guy like Kyle Rudolph than Martellus Bennett just because you know what you're going to get with a guy like Kyle Rudolph. Like, he's going to be consistent, and that's what you want from your tight end. You don't want a guy with a bunch of question marks. So I'd definitely go with a guy like him over Martellus Bennett.
The thing I have about Kyle Rudolph, though, is last year he had like over 800 yards receiving. That's like more yards than any other season that he's ever had, and it's by a lot. It makes me think that the yardage is going to come down a little bit. I know that he had another like outlier season, like I think it was like a few years back where he had like double-digit touchdowns. So that's obviously something that he can do because he's done it before. I think though he might finish somewhere in the middle. You know, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't return tight end 9 numbers. Maybe it's like a little bit off of that. Maybe like 11, 12. You know. Either way, I think you're going to get something good out of him, but you got to pay an 8th round for him. But, so I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah, it's one of those guys that you can wait a little longer and still get a good tight end or a decent tight end, but that's good value there still.
I mean, he's a guy where if you really do wait, it still might pay off because you might have a potential to get 10 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Let's go over to the Chicago Bears. I don't really think we need to really talk about drafting any of their quarterbacks per se, but who do you think will end up being the starter there? Do you think it's going to be Glennon? Do you think it's going to be Glennon end up being the starter for right now?
It almost has to be. It almost has to be because, you know, they paid him. I don't know if they were really planning on, you know, Trubisky might have been the plan all along. I tend to think not since the deal they gave Glennon.
I think John Lynch.
Nowadays,
I think John Lynch kind of baited them into trading there for those draft picks. I think he kind of did the fishing reel.
Yeah, and I mean you see, like a guy. You see a lot of rookie quarterbacks starting nowadays, but I still think most teams want to wait on that and let them, you know, develop a little bit. So I think they know they're not ready to win anything. So, I mean, there's no reason to rush Trubisky in. Let him sit behind Glennon for a little bit. Let Glennon show off, maybe get some trade value. So, I mean, there's really no reason to start Trubisky at this point because all it's going to do is piss off Mike Glennon. He's going to lose all the trade value he has. And then, you know, you're just going to throw a rookie into a fire where he's going to lose 13 games. So, I mean, I think Glennon should start. I think he will start. I think they'd be pretty dumb if they started Trubisky, honestly.
Well, you know, it seems like they went young everywhere else, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would do more harm than good to just throw Trubisky in there with no help other than Jordan Howard, and it could just ruin his confidence too, you know.
Yeah.
As far as the running back situation, people think that it's just going to be this Jordan Howard show. I think that he'll get the majority of the carries, but I don't think he'll be in there a lot on third down. I think that they'll put in. They drafted Tarek Cohen. He's a guy that, you know, he played in a smaller school, but he had a nickname, the Human Joystick. We actually had one of our new writers just come out with an article talking about him. There's like he's under his breakout players for the Chicago Bears. This is a guy that can catch the ball. I mean, maybe if they can utilize him a little bit when they're losing, you might see a lot more of him than Jordan Howard. You know, so I mean, it's something to definitely look into.
Yeah, Howard's one of those guys that his ADP is so high, and he's such in line for a sophomore slump, and it just because he broke out last year and he came out of nowhere, and now he's kind of in line to slow down a little bit, and especially on a team that is going to get blown out a lot this season. I mean, most of the guys that they're starting are just guys they've drafted in the last 2 or 3 years, and they're wanting to kind of see what they've got in them. Like their receivers, Kevin White and Cameron Meredith. I mean, those are both really young guys. Kevin White has not been able to stay healthy at all, so they want to kind of see what they've got. They know they're not going to win any games, and so it's a really young team with a lot of young players. Jordan Howard is going to have a big target on him this year. Teams are going to focus. People are just not going to go into the game and play the Bears and think, oh no, we need to stop Cam Meredith. He's going to kill us. No, they're going to focus. No, they're going to focus on Jordan Howard, and they're going to try to game plan around him. And, last year Jordan Howard, he averaged over 5 yards a carry, but that's not something that can happen every year. It's very few running backs average 5 yards a carry year in and year out. Like I could definitely just imagine it coming down to like a modest like 4.4 or 4.5, and suddenly this 1,300-yard rusher is barely getting like over 1,000 yards if he gets like 225 carries. I do think he'll get a little bit more than that, but you get the drift. You know what I mean? Yeah, definitely.
And you're paying like an early second-round pick for him. That scares me.
Yeah, I'm worried about it. I'm probably going to stay away from him in my leagues this season.
This is a guy that did have some injury issues in college too, and Jeremy Langford's a guy you can get for free. He'd be next in line for carries if Jordan Howard was to go down. Because a big running back like that, a lot of people are going to go at his lower body, and that could lead to injuries.
Yeah, and
so, that worries me a little bit too.
History. Yeah, like you said, his injury history in college.
Yeah. The receivers for this team. Is there any guy that you would really want to have on your team? I know you're worried about Kevin White with his health. Are you believing in Cameron Meredith to have another breakout season? I guess you could say, because he had like a mini one last year.
No, I really don't. And I just don't like anybody in this receiving core. They picked up a couple guys this offseason. Well, they actually picked up a few guys, I guess, because they got Victor Cruz, Ruben Randall, Marcus Wheaton. So, it's a little bit deeper of a receiving core. It's a bunch of kind of guys that, I thought Ruben Randall would have wanted to go somewhere and try to start, and I think that's what he's probably going to try to do. So I don't really love anybody in this receiving core, especially since Cameron Meredith broke out last year and he was still so inconsistent. So I don't really love anybody.
The Bears have the least amount of fantasy players in their team out of any other team in the league. They only have 3 players being drafted. Jordan Howard as running back 9, Cameron Meredith as wide receiver 41, and Kevin White as wide receiver 56. Even the Jets have more players being drafted than the Bears. The Jets have more talent on offense than them.
Yeah.
Because the Jets obviously they got Bilal Powell, they got Forte, they also have Enunwa, but they're Austin Safarian-Jenkins popped up as as tight end 23. I just looked it up. Not a whole lot to like on that Bears team. Let's go over to the AFC. We spent too much time on the NFC. Let's go to the AFC North. We'll start with the Steelers. Obviously, they have so many weapons. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about them. We know how good they are. Big Ben, though, could be an interesting topic. He's going as quarterback 8. He's going to 8. He's at 808 ADP. Do you like him more than some of these guys that he's going in front of, like a Matthew Stafford?
I do, as I think, I have him rated higher, so I think he's going to do better. But at the same time, you've just got to look at value. And someone like him who just gets injured so often, and it's just something you worry about all the time, I would probably rather wait on a guy like Matthew Stafford rather than drafting Big Ben, just because I would feel a lot safer. But at the same time, if Big Ben comes out and he stays healthy all 16 games, he could easily end up being a top 5 quarterback with the numbers he could put up in this ridiculous offense because, they're not really weak at any spot in their skill positions. They're deep, so I think they're in for another really good season on offense.
See, if I were doing projections, I would be able to predict. I would be able to project Le'Veon Bell for 15 games. I wouldn't be able to do the same for Big Ben. I'd probably have to put him down for 12 because I think he might miss like 2 or 3 games. It just seems like he does that every year, and it's a little bit worrisome because when he goes down, the offense goes down.
Yep.
Le'Veon Bell, obviously, he's getting taken the second pick overall. Honestly, I'm projecting him to stay healthy this season. I think he'll do it. It's the first season where he's not looming a suspension or injured or anything. He could potentially be the number 1 overall player this year.
And he's got a lot to play for this year too, with next offseason looming.
But I think the guy though you might want to look at the end of your draft though is James Conner to handcuff Le'Veon Bell. He's going as like running back 68, so you can scoop him up like right before you take your kicker in your defense. You can pick up James Conner, and I think I don't know if it's going to be the same scenario as the past though. Like if the Le'Veon Bell goes out, I think the Steelers either might just start to air it out more or go to like more of a committee approach. I don't think it's just they're going to rely on one guy because they do have Fitzgerald Toussaint there, and I think they have Niles Davis there. So if Le'Veon Bell was to go out, I think they might go to a committee.
Yeah, and the Steelers' backfield is funny because their backup running back can be one of the best things in fantasy football and one of the worst because, if they end up starting, they're putting up crazy numbers that you just don't see out of backups. But if Le'Veon's healthy, they're literally getting no work at all. Like Le'Veon's taking all that work. So, I would definitely it's worth it because of the upside to draft a guy like James Conner, I think. Because if Le'Veon does go down, and there's always that possibility, he's really valuable. Like whoever the running back is in that, I don't care if they put Trent Richardson in that backfield, he's going to be valuable. Like whoever they put in the backfield is going to be good just because of how, like, they're never going to be playing for the run. They're always going to be worried about the pass.
Speaking of the pass, Antonio Brown, he's still going as wide receiver 1, 4th pick overall. You said that you could see him going before Zeke now because of the new news about him. Who else on this offense are you worried about? They got Octavius Bryant back, going as wide receiver 22, like in the 4th round. They also drafted J.J. Smith-Schuster. They got a dude that has a crooked finger as a receiver. They also have Jesse James, the tight end. They also got rid of Darius Green. Who do you think is going to emerge as that number 2? Do you think it's going to be hands down Bryant?
Yeah, I do. I like Martavis Bryant a lot. I'm not as high on him this season because the receivers, like I'm still taking Antonio Brown, but the receivers just do worry me, and that whole offense worries me a little bit just because of Ben Roethlisberger, and if he gets hurt, like they're going to lose so much value. And so, that's just so much you have to think about when you're drafting. But I love Martavis Bryant. I think he's so talented, and I think a lot of people are kind of forgetting how good he was that season before he got suspended. So, he's got a really high upside. But at the same time, he could be one of those guys that could be a bust for you wherever you pick him. It just really depends on the health of Ben Roethlisberger. And, well, I really think that's honestly it. I think I really am not worried about Martavis Bryant fitting back in the offense or anything like that. I think it all just relies on Ben's health.
I think I just want to, hire some stoner just smoke all his pots. Don't worry about it. He'll smoke all your pot for you. You just focus on football and catching touchdowns, and he'll take care of your pot. He'll be your pot watcher. I do think, though, Jesse James could be an interesting guy. He's not currently a guy that's been getting drafted, but I think he could be a sneaky guy that could potentially end up being a tight end one. Because, I mean, this is a team that does like to target the tight end, and he was catching some touchdown passes last year. That could be a trend that could continue. It just depends on how much they actually use Bryant in the red zone, too, you know.
Yeah, I picked up Jesse James in a few leagues last year just because I know how much he liked to utilize the tight end with Heath Miller. They didn't use him as much as I thought they would this year or last year, but this year, you know, I'm optimistic. I think he could have a good season. You know, any tight end in a really potent offense like that always has a chance to put up big numbers. You just never know. And when you're getting a guy that's going undrafted, like you could pick him up in free agency, like that's a good value, I think.
In the Scott Fish Bowl, every time a tight end gets a first down, it's 2.5 points. So obviously tight ends went really fast. Jesse James ended up being my second tight end. I have Zach Ertz and I have Jesse James as my tight end committee. Oh, I also got Jermaine Gresham as a tight end 3. So I don't got a lot of depth behind Ertz. So I really hope Ertz is a good one this year.
Yeah.
Let's go over to the Cincinnati Bengals. We have Andy Dalton. I think he's a bit undervalued. He's being drafted as quarterback 17. There's a good chance he could beat that. He was doing pretty good until he broke his thumb last year, and he didn't have that 1 year. And I know last year he didn't have AJ Green for 6 games. But now they also have John Ross. They have Joe Mixon. This offense could be a little better, but they still have some woos at the offensive line. That's one thing that does worry me. How do you feel about Andy Dalton?
You know, I loved Andy Dalton. I really pulled for TCU in college football. So I was really big on Andy Dalton, and I still like him. I'm not big on him as a quarterback. I'm a little higher on him as a fantasy quarterback, but I still am not huge. I do think he has a chance to outplay his ADP. He's got really good weapons with him. He still might have Brandon LaFell starting, so I don't like that. But I do think he is in line where he could have a good season. So Andy Dalton's one of those guys where you could find some really good value later in your draft.
Yeah, he's a guy that's going in the 12th round right now. So if you say you really waited, you went 10 rounds and you didn't draft a quarterback, you're in the 11th round, you can go Stafford, then you can go to Andy Dalton, and then that could be your 2 quarterbacks, and that's fine.
Yeah.
The running game, though, is a big question mark. I know you're not as high on Joe Mixon as I am, but, you know, the coach came out and he was really praising Mixon. He said that his talent is just it's unmatched on this team, pretty much, is what he was saying. I think that there's a good chance that he could get that passing role early because, you know, Giovanni Bernard did have a torn ACL last year. He said that he likes the fact that he's big, fast, can catch and run, and he can see the whole field. So he had nothing but good things to say about him.
Yeah,
are you a little bit higher on him now?
He's definitely, well, I'm still not that high just because of the situation. I do think they're going to want to get him out there, but he just worries me. I may end up regretting passing on him in some drafts. But since he just has those other 2 running backs, I know Gio's going to keep the 3rd down role probably. So I'm still not really high on him, but I do like him as a talent. I think he's crazy talented, and I think he eventually is going to be a really good running back. I just would be worried about him, especially where he's going in drafts. I feel like he's just going a little too high for me at this point.
Yeah, I was just about to say that's the one issue I have with Joe Mixon. His ADP is way too high. He is currently being taken as the 16th running back off the board, very beginning of the 4th round. That's way too high. I know people got the rookie fever. Hopefully that comes down a little bit, but I'm not paying that price for Joe Mixon, especially when you don't know if he's going to get a full workload. That's too much for my blood. Giovanni Bernard, he's going in the 14th round. And it's not even a guarantee that Mixon will have more receptions than Bernard, you know?
Yeah.
Jeremy Hill's another guy going late, 12th round. I think people are pretty convinced that he's not a very good running back. I think people are convinced.
I think people have finally accepted it. Yeah.
The wide receivers, though, I think the two guys that we can really talk about, A.J. Green's going as the 5th wide receiver off the board. He was a guy that was playing at a top 5 pace before he went down last year, so I think it's a fair price for him. I can't say enough good things about him. I mean, I will say, though, sometimes it does seem like he's a bit streaky, like he'll score like 20 points, and then he'll score 5 points, then he'll score 25 points. You know, he does seem like a guy that can be a little bit boom or bust sometimes.
Yeah, he definitely can be. So I remember when I've had him on my roster in years past, that's always what I've noticed. But, you know, that happens with a lot of big receivers like that. I think it's because you just expect so much from them every week, and they just can't put that up. Because, I mean, Julio was guilty of that last season, you know, putting up 3 or 4 games where he just really didn't do anything. So you always kind of have that sitting there with your star receivers, but at the same time, he's just too good to pass on.
I remember Calvin Johnson in 2015, where in like 3 or 4 games he had like 500 yards and like 5 touchdowns, but then like outside of that he only had like 800 yards and like 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
John Ross, though, do you feel like he could be a sneaky late round pick? He is going as a wide receiver 54 back to the 11th round. I feel like he could be a sneaky guy that could score a lot of deep touchdown passes, especially if you're in leagues where they reward like bonus points for long touchdowns. I think that'd be I think he'd be worth a late flyer.
Yeah, when you're looking that late in the draft, I mean, you're just looking for upside at that point, and I mean, you're not going to find many guys with a higher upside than John Ross. I mean, everybody knows how fast he is at this point. Everybody knows, you know, his injury history, and so he's still just as fast. You don't have to worry about that. Andy Dalton's going to hurl it downfield to him. So I do like John Ross. I'd still be worried about him, but I mean, you know, where he's going at the draft, I think that's a good spot for him. So I'm worried about him, yeah, but I mean, he wouldn't be going in the 11th round if there weren't things to be worried about.
Yeah, I mean, where you're getting him, even if he doesn't pan out, you can just cut him.
Yeah.
No, cut him, no big deal. It's a Band-Aid, rip it off. Tyler Eifert, though, is a guy where if he doesn't get his touchdowns, it's not just a Band-Aid to rip off. It's a little bit deeper of a wound. He's going as tight end number 6. Beginning of the 7th round, is that still too rich for you?
It is. I think me and you I feel like we're always on the outside with Tyler Eifert. I feel like everybody's a lot higher on him than we are.
They are. I probably have him as like tight end 10 or 11. He's getting drafted as tight end 6.
I didn't have him that low, but I definitely, like, people have him higher than Delanie Walker, and he was going almost a round before Delanie Walker in some mock drafts. So I don't see that at all. I'd much rather have a guy like Delanie Walker.
I like Kyle Rudolph more than I like Eifert. Because at least Kyle Rudolph gets a stable amount of targets, whereas I can't say the same with Eifert. Eifert just doesn't get the consistent amount of usage. He'll get his red zones, though. He'll get his red zone looks, but he doesn't get a lot of looks outside of that.
That probably would be the toss-up I would have. Like, I would draft Eifert before Martellus Bennett and Ebron and those other guys we've been talking about. But Kyle Rudolph would probably be the one I would have to think about.
Don't get me wrong. Eifert has a lot of upside because he has that touchdown ability, and that's why you're drafting him before Bennett. You're drafting him before Eifert. But when a guy that can catch passes and score touchdowns, like a guy like Rudolph and Delaney Walker, then you're not so high on Eifert compared to those players.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the Baltimore Ravens. This is a team with some a lot of targets that were available this offseason with the departure of Steve Smith, with the injury to Dennis Pitta, and then they also had another tight end get suspended for the year, Darren Waller. So their tight end situation's a mess. Benjamin Watson, Cocky Gilmore. We don't know who's going to start yet, so we don't got to worry about that. Joe Flacco is being drafted as a backup quarterback 22. Baltimore's though they've led the league in passing attempts the past 2 seasons, but it hasn't shown for Flacco in his numbers. It seems like he hasn't been very efficient with those attempts.
Yeah, Flacco is one of those guys who always surprises me how low he goes, and I guess I just still think of him as a good quarterback. And I mean, he's a decent quarterback, but I do think the addition of Jerry Maclin's going to be big for them. I'm looking forward to seeing what him and Mike Wallace can do on the field together, because they're just, both of them are so fast, and Rashad Perriman. All 3 of them are just really fast, and I want to see what that offense looks like with them. And Jeremy Maclin, I think people kind of forget how good he was, and I think people are going to kind of get reminded now, because they are going to hurl it downfield a lot. They're going to throw it a ton. They don't have a great running game, especially to start the season. They're going to have a probably subpar running game. So, and without a tight end, they're going to be really leaning on those receivers to put up big numbers. So I like this receiving core, especially where you're going to be getting them in the draft. Seems like they're always, like, all these receivers are pretty low in ADPs.
I think Joe, he's a good draft pick if you are in a 2-quarterback league, or if you're in a best ball format. If you're in a best ball format, that's great. Because it seems like every year Joe Flacco will have like 1 or 2 games where he'll just have like 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then the rest of them are just all like boring games. Like he's not going to have any games where they're just so awful and terrible. But every once in a while he'll have those crazy weeks. I remember there's one game where I started him against the Dolphins, and he just destroyed him for like 5 touchdowns in like the first half. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago or something like that. Sometimes he just has those explosions. So, it could happen this year. He has Jeremy Maclin. I think he's a better downfield receiver than people give him credit for. But I still think, Mike Wallace is still going to be that guy. He's still going to be their deep threat. They're going to probably use him like that. I don't really see Wallace's targets going up a whole lot now that Maclin is there. I think Maclin's going to get a good chunk of the targets. I could see him getting like 130, 140. That's within the realm. I think that's probably how many targets he's going to get. If he gets that many targets, Jeremy Maclin's a pretty good value for where he's going. What is he like? Wide receiver 36.
Yeah, and I could see Jeremy Maclin taking over as the number 1 receiver this year. I know Mike Wallace and Joe Flacco already have a good rapport together, but I think Jeremy Maclin is going to have a pretty good year. I was disappointed how he played with the Chiefs. I just don't think the Chiefs really fit the kind of receiver he is. So hopefully the Ravens will be able to do that.
He's playing with Andy Reid's offense, and Alex Smith was his quarterback. Alex Smith's not going to throw the ball down the field a whole lot, He never has.
Yeah, or at all.
Yeah. I think, though, the running back that's getting overlooked on this team is Terrence West. Terrence West, he's going as running back 47 off the board, back in the 10th round. Kenneth Dixon is going in a round before him, and he's suspended for 4 games. I think that 4-game suspension is going to be significant for him. Danny Woodhead, we know he's going to be the pass catcher on that team. That's what Kenneth Dixon. That's kind of what he was doing last year, was catching the ball. I think that hurts him a little bit. And with him being out for
Yeah.
4 games, it kind of makes him go a little bit behind on the depth chart. You know, he's going to get off to a slow start. He may never recover, you know.
Yeah, and I like Kenneth Dixon. I think he's going to end up being the starter and really keep that job. And I'm hoping he's going to turn into a pretty good running back. I liked him a lot coming out of college. I'm not a big Terrence West guy at all, but when you're getting him that late, that's someone good who, you know, he could end up starting for the first 4 weeks and maybe a few more. And so that's someone, if he has a good first few weeks, you could end up starting him and he could help you out until Kenneth Dixon comes back. Or, I mean, you could do what a lot of people did last year and trade D'Angelo Williams. Like you could trade Terrence West after he has a couple good weeks. And so that would be someone that would be worth a late pick.
You know, the one thing about I don't know, I lost my train of thought.
Now we can close out on the Browns.
Yeah, we'll go over to the Browns. Obviously, for fantasy purposes, we do not have to worry about their quarterback. We really don't have to worry about their tight end either. I know they got Njoku. I don't think we really got to worry about him in his rookie season when he's playing with the Browns, and they don't even have a quarterback yet.
Yeah.
The 2 main guys that you're going to worry about are guys that I'm not really too big on. I mean, I think Crowell's being drafted at a ceiling. He's being drafted as running back 14. Do you really think he's going to do better than running back 14? I don't.
I don't. I'm lower on Crowell than most people, so I'm probably not the right person.
I am as well. I am not taking him in the 3rd round. He plays for the Browns. No thanks.
Yeah, and there's a lot of hype around him this year, and I don't love the situation.
I love the player, but I hate the situation, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, of all the Browns, that's probably who I would look at the most, even over the receivers, just because I feel like he's going to get more guaranteed touches. But, you know, it's the Browns. No one's going to be real happy about getting anybody.
I mean, Hugh Jackson did publicly come out and say that he keeps himself up at night about how he didn't run the ball enough last season, that he says he loves to run the ball and he wants to run the ball more this season. They did improve the offensive line. So, I mean, I get the reasons why people like Crowell, but I think they still forget the fact that he plays for the Browns. They're not going to have a lot of opportunity to score. They're going to play from behind a lot, and when that happens, that's why Duke Johnson ends up taking the field. I mean, he did get 40 receptions, though.
Yeah. Weren't you just wanting to make a bet with me that Crowell would do better than Fournette?
I do think he'll do better than Fournette.
That's just surprising to me from what you just said. I just thought you were higher on Crowell, and I mean, I would. I'm
saying I would never take Crowell in the 3rd round, but yeah. I do think he'd do better. I do think he's going to outdo Fournette.
Yeah, but that's interesting because
Fournette's going in the 2nd round. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people this year going in the 2nd and 3rd round that just seem really high to me, and I feel like I'm gonna end up getting stuck with one of them.
I mean, I'd actually rather have Duke Johnson going at running back 46 than Crowell going at running back 14. Just because Duke Johnson, he'll be on the field when they're losing. He might be able to accumulate some passes, especially if they have a rookie running or a rookie quarterback. That could only help more, I think.
Yeah.
Are you excited about either one of the? I know obviously you're not excited about either one of the receivers. Could you find either one of them on your team? I think I kind of like Corey Coleman at the beginning of the 10th round. I think it's a decent dart throw.
I hope I don't find any of them on my team, but if I do, I would. Corey Coleman would be the guy for me, just for the upside. You know, Kenny Britt. Everybody knows what Kenny Britt is and what kind of receiver he is. So I think Corey Coleman definitely has a higher ceiling. So that's someone I would look for if I'm going to go for anybody.
You know who they're saying that was making a splash at camp was Ricardo Lewis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said he was making a splash at camp, but he'll end up winning out the wide receiver 3 job. Isn't that a desirable job to have in Cleveland?
Well, when wide receiver 1 and 2 aren't very valuable, 3 is probably not really valuable either.
All right, yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to be excited about in terms of catching the. I mean, someone's got to catch the ball, though. That's my point. I think if I had to plant my flag, though, it'd be Corey Coleman. I think he'll get a decent amount of targets. I really do. Can he stay healthy, though? We'll see.
Yeah, they've got a couple receivers in that that are always getting hurt, so that worries me a little bit.
I mean, that pretty much will cover all the teams we're gonna talk about today. I do want to have a hot take episode soon, though. Where we just give all our hot takes this year. We'll blow our nut all in one episode, and it'll be great.
That sounds fun. I'm worried people are going to look down on me for my hot takes. I feel like they're going to be too hot.
Well, if they're too hot, don't taste the salsa. That pretty much do it for today's show. I'd like to thank you, Fifth Downers, for listening in. If you enjoyed the show and you haven't done so yet, please go into iTunes and leave us a rate and review. It'd be greatly appreciated. Every time you guys read a rate and review, or every time you guys write a review, I read them. I pick out my favorite one, and if you guys send me screenshots of your reviews, you have a chance to win a T-shirt. Doesn't everybody want a Fifth Down T-shirt? They come in like every size. They come up to like 4XL. So even fat people can wear them.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for today's show. Casey, thank you for being on. Hopefully we'll do our hot takes this weekend if you're available.
All right, sure thing.